last war. It will show you the purpose of your training. This is to illustrate the very start of a campaign, actually D-Day in Normandy. In the assault of these beaches, the sappers' task was to get the infantry and armor through the first belt of obstacles to grab the bridgehead. This sequence shows what some of these obstacles looked like. Obstacles had to be removed before clear lanes could be established to allow the infantry and armor and their supporting arms to move inland. All this beach clearance took place under heavy enemy fire. As soon as the bridgehead had been established, the infantry and armor moved inland, taking their normal sappers with them. While the fighting moves on, we'll consider the tasks of the RE units in the port and base areas. At the earliest possible moment, the port construction units get busy. Here you see one of their surveyors at work, making a final recce of the beach in readiness for Mulberry. This was the great artificial harbour which was designed by Royal Engineers and prefabricated in England, and then towed over to Normandy by men of the Royal Navy and Royal Engineers. These huge caissons were manoeuvred into position, sunk and assembled by the sappers, who completed this gigantic task in extremely short time under the most adverse conditions, enabling thousands of tons of equipment, vehicles and stores to be fed forward to the divisions needing them in the fighting line. In other theaters of war, port construction and maintenance units had to deal with harbors and port installations which had been heavily bombed by the RAF or disorganized by the enemy. Here are heavy plants being offloaded by the sappers. Here's another landing, Borneo this time. This too was an amphibious operation, and the sappers were the first troops to land. In this case, they were Australians. They went in to clear the beach obstacles under cover of a smoke screen. The landing took place in the spring of 1945. In any theatre, while the main forces advance inland and the beachhead is being consolidated, the engineers get busy clearing up the streets and making new roads so that the transport taking stores and ammunition to the forward troops can make a quick turnaround. We'll see more of the forward troops later on. In towns, narrow streets have to be widened and sharp corners improved. This dozer operator is clearing to a flat surface, a more tricky job than it looks. Unsafe buildings have to be demolished. For all these jobs, heavy plant is very useful. This is the sort of thing a tractor can do in minutes, where manual labor would take hours. Here now are sappers on bomb disposal. The troop officer first to his sergeant the parts of the building that will have to be shored up or removed to make it safe for the sappers who are to dispose of the bomb. The staircase, for example, will have to be chopped down. The shoring is all done by sapper carpenters who are afterwards responsible for the timbering of the shaft down to the bomb. Pneumatic tools are used as long as possible, but when their vibration is likely to set off the bomb, the sappers continue by digging with picks and shovels. The officer stands by with his instruments to see if a delay action fuse is still ticking. This is an enemy bomb, but when a rapid advance has been made, the bomb disposal men have to deal with unexploded bombs dropped by our own Air Force. As a secondary role, they have to lift mines and booby traps in the base and communication zones. One of the first jobs in any landing operation is the construction of airfields in the bridgehead and the repair of captured airfields. This may have to be carried out by Army engineer regiments. While a certain amount of work can be done by hand, the use of heavy plant greatly speeds up matters. Here you see typical examples: dozers, motor graders, rollers, and so on. Now, here's an electrical and mechanical squadron at work laying pipelines. This pipeline pumped petrol straight from England to France and later on right up to the Rhine. The erection of these large storage tanks was also part of their work. On a job like this, there's plenty of scope for the tradesmen: plumbers, boilermakers, riveters, fitters, and so on. This is an engineer base workshop, and here again the craftsman with an engineering knowledge comes into his own. Blacksmiths, machinists, fitters, turners, carpenters and joiners, etc. This is an engineer stores base depot in Brussels. Here they keep all the engineer stores and equipment required by an army, and you'll be surprised how much it is. It's sited close to road, rail and waterways so that a quick turnaround can be effected. The sapper task here is the receipt, storage, maintenance and issue of engineer stores. From the largest, which are easy to identify, to the small ones which are not so much in evidence. Look at this huge stack of pontoons and those other bridging parts in the foreground. There's enough equipment here for several miles of bridge. And behind the scenes is the inevitable sapper keeping the equipment in first-class condition. This chap's repairing a damaged folding boat, and he seems to be making a pretty good job of it too. Laying petrol pipelines, big stores looks like, plant. There will be a tremendous amount of accommodation work for housing men and stores, and also railway construction. Now we're going to have a look at some of the work which might be going on in the communication zone. Here's something you're sure to find, no matter what the theater of operations: a construction squadron building a camp or hospital. The man in charge here is the garrison engineer who, with his clerks of works, supervises all building construction. These key men may be clerks of works, construction, electrical, or mechanical. A typical job is to see that essential services, such as electric supplies, are maintained. Here you see a clerk of works electrical checking up at a power station. He's a warrant officer, while here a staff sergeant sees that all is in order at the local waterworks. One of the most important tasks in the ComZ is to keep open communications by rail and road. This means a great deal of repair, maintenance, and construction. The amount of transport in an army is enormous, and you never seem to have enough road space for it. Tanks, transporters, and other very heavy loads soon tear all but the best surfaces to pieces. At times, it's a bit of a sapper's nightmare, so they're kept pretty busy all the time. This is the construction of a bypass. They have to be built to prevent traffic congestion in badly bombed towns or towns with narrow streets. Here again, heavy plant is used a lot and greatly speeds up work. Dozers, graders, diggers, and dumpers are all skillfully used by sapper operators to their best advantage. Traffic will soon be pouring over this new route. When stone, chippings, and other road materials are needed, quarrying squadrons go to work to provide them. Here are sappers charging the hopper of a stone crusher to produce small chippings for top coats in roadwork. And here's the finished product being wheeled away from the far end. On a big job, it's better to use tippers or dumpers. Now, who's this? Yes, it's General Eisenhower, the Supreme Commander, watching the sappers building a corduroy road with timber supplied by a forestry squadron. This road was made in the Reichwald forest in Germany in 1945. Whole divisions were being supplied down routes which were little more than tracks. Forestry units also supplied timber for bridging and other purposes. These scenes were taken in Burma in 1944 and show Indian engineers at work. In this case, timber was being prepared for boats in which to ferry across the Chindwin. Elephants take the place of dozers here to drag the timber to the mill. Some is prepared by hand, and the rest goes to the sawmill, where circular saws cut it into bulks and planks of the required size. Those are the keel sections of the boats going down now. Afterwards, the ribs are built up and the outer timbers spiked on. Some of the work here is being done by natives under the supervision of the Indian engineers. This shows a whole beach full of boats in various stages of construction. Now here we have some material showing a Canadian forestry squadron at work in Holland in the winter of 1944. Notice how many shots there are of Commonwealth troops. This timber is being used for bridging in the Com-Z area. The unit that's doing it is an Army Engineer Regiment. They don't always use Bailey or other unit construction bridges. This is a timber pile bridge with steel road bearers. The piles are driven by mechanical means. When fully driven, carpenters cut off the tops with petrol-driven saws. There's more work for them when the decking is being laid. This shows how necessary the good craftsman is in the field as well as the Com-Z unit. Here's another carpenter boring the holes to secure the wheel guides to the decking, while down at water level, a sapper is fixing bracing to the piles. This bridge was demolished by the enemy. The sappers free to make good this sort of thing, and often it's much worse since here the infantry are able to get across. Whenever possible, diversions must be found or made to avoid bridges or other large-scale obstruction. Here, speed is vital. This diversion was made by South African sappers in Tunisia. They're usually made in the forefront of the battle. This is a Class 40 Bailey Bridge at Caen. It was built by the divisional engineers. Notice what a thorough demolition the enemy has done to the old bridge. This second bridge was built when the fighting moved on. The area then came into Army and later into the Com-Z area. One bridge then took the traffic going forward to the corps and divisions, and the other the traffic going back to base area. The transportation branch of the RE operate and maintain railways. Before the enemy moves out of an area, he destroys everything he can, leaving shattered rolling stock and torn up tracks for the railway troops to make good. These sappers are laying new tracks. Heavy plant levels the ground to a true surface. All the RE railway troops go through a course at the RE Transportation Centre in England before joining a unit in the field. There are plate layers, wagon builders, shunters, engine drivers, and numerous other trades. In fact, they can operate and maintain a complete railway system just like one of the big mainline railways at home in England. Now we come to a job of improvisation done by Indian railway troops. They're getting a railway system going again using jeeps instead of locomotives. One of the most interesting aspects of the life of a sapper is that he's always being called on to improvise and use whatever stores and materials are readily available to do the job in hand. This is a very good example of that adaptability of his. Australian engineers also constructed and ran a jeep railway in Burma. Well, now you've seen some of the jobs happening in the communication zone. The construction of roads, railways, and camps, quarrying, forestry, some heavy bridging and the clearing up of debris. The next scenes are taken in Army and Corps areas. Some of the units shown here come up forward from areas further back and are working under Corps and Army. Here's one, a survey squadron. Survey holds some of the most highly technical craftsmen in the Army, and their trades are numerous. This chap's preparing a map from an aerial survey. In the field, one of survey's most important jobs is the preparation of defense overprint. They overprint onto ordinary survey maps the layout of enemy positions from information served up by intelligence, showing where the enemy is, strong points, guns, tank obstacles, minefields, and so on, for the benefit of the units about to attack them. That's a photographic reproduction of the block they've made. This is a mobile printer at work. Here's one of the finished overprinted maps coming off the machine. It's got all the enemy positions marked on it, right up to date. This airstrip is under construction in the Corps area. It's much further forward than the last one you saw. Sappers with their dozers clear trees and brushwood. The ground is leveled off with other heavy plant, and in very quick time the first aircraft comes in to land. As we said earlier, one of the jobs of the Corps troops is to improve and increase road communications as fast as possible. Well, this is the sort of thing that's wanted. Constructing a large bailey on crib piers and clearing up the debris of a blown bridge. It's two-way and built on a German autobahn. Notice the jobs of the individual sappers. One is truing up a roller, another tightening up cross-bracing on a pier, and others are lowering panels using blocks and tackles. You see the second bridge being launched in these shots. It looks like this from the roadway when completed. Next, we have a very good example of a larger Bailey pontoon bridge. It was built in December 1944 over the Chindwin in Burma. That's the shore landing bay being boomed forward. This raft is being rowed into bridge. The far landing bay is launched. A final checkup is made. The nameplate is fixed up, and over go the first vehicles. From above, we get a very good idea of its length, which, by the way, was 1,150 feet. This bridge was built over the River Po in Italy in 1945. It's a semi-permanent bridge built by South African sappers who were also responsible for designing it. The chief engineer, 8th Army, is seen here opening the bridge for traffic. Canal clearance was a major task for all sorts of units in Germany. These shots are typical of the sort of thing that happened. Not only were bridges demolished, but canal banks too were blown in. The sappers had to cut up and withdraw from the canal beds hundreds of these bridges. They used mechanical equipment and AVREs. They're Assault Vehicles Royal Engineers. You can see this one dragging out a piece of bridge. Divers were used. This one, he's a sapper of course, is going down to place underwater charges. When they've shifted that bridge, here are another couple to be getting on with. This is another way of doing the job. A barge was sunk at each side of this bridge. Bailey girders were fitted through its members and chocks fitted above them. Then the water was pumped out of the barges and the bridge floated away. Another sapper task connected with waterways is the operation of barges and other waterborne traffic. The units who carry this out are, of course, inland water transport units. The sappers who man the barges mostly worked in the ports and on the canals and waterways of Britain in peacetime. This is the Weser, where they had to divert the river for about a mile into a new bed. The aqueduct was bombed by the RAF, and the river was scouring away the foundations of 2 of the remaining piers. To save them, the river had to be diverted underneath one of the other arches. The job was done by a construction unit brought up from base where it had been working on the port. Another example of the flexibility of the organization. There's the new channel just before the river was allowed to flow through it. The next sequence is the demolition of the U-boat pens at Hamburg. Demolitions are a most important task. Apart from offensive demolitions, in a withdrawal it falls to the sappers to delay the enemy not only by laying mines in his path, but by blowing bridges, cratering roads, wrecking installations, and destroying supply dumps that can't be moved in time. In this demolition, over 30 tons of explosives were used, mostly captured German bombs. The object was to bring down completely the roofs of all 5 bays in the pens and smash up the inside walls. Most of the concrete is 15 feet thick and heavily reinforced. This party is laying the electric cables to the firing point. The OC of the field squadron is going to touch off the demolition at the set time. Senior officers of all services were there to observe the results. You can see for yourselves that they were up to expectations. The next scenes were taken in Norway on a commando raid. Here the sappers' task was to destroy supplies and installations. The Norwegians lent a hand. These scorched earth programs are always part of the general plan in a withdrawal. In the Low Countries and France in 1940, and again in Crete and Greece in 1941, sappers had carried out denial schemes with the barest resources and in the face of the enemy. They were often unaided by other arms of the service and had only their own weapons with which to defend themselves. Next we have a short sequence on mine laying in the core area. This is one of the methods used in the last war. The mines are dug into the ground. The safety pin is withdrawn and the mine is fully armed. All minefields are marked with minefield markers for the benefit of our own troops. These next few shots show dogs being trained for minefield clearance. They were mainly used in Army and COMZ areas, where they did an extraordinarily good job in detecting mines. They work more quickly than a man with a mechanical detector, but it takes a long time to train them, and not all dogs are suitable. After a mine has been found, it is marked with one of these white cones, and the dog is rewarded with a titbit. Here are some shots taken in Gibraltar. These sappers are working in the galleries there, tunneling into the rock. They are improving and expanding the underground fortifications and installations. All these chaps are highly skilled miners, and most of them learnt their trade in the coal fields at home. Normally, pneumatic tools and other plant are used, but because of the limited size of this gallery, the sappers are using picks and shovels. Now we move forward again from Army and Corps area into Divisional area.
is my plan. I wish to impress on that the whole success of the operation depends on getting the tanks and guns through the minefield. Unless that is accomplished, the whole impetus of the attack is prejudiced. Now, to get down to more detail, first of all, there must be a thorough and detailed reconnaissance of the area.
The job of the Recce Patrol is to find out where the anti-tank mines are laid and what kind they are. On completion, the patrol commander reports to his OC.
The minefield extends from here to here.
How many belts are there?
4 belts, sir, all telemines and some are booby-trapped.
How about anti-personnel mines?
There are 2 rows of S-mines, some with tripwires and some with prongs in front of each of the first 2 belts.
Any wire?
Yes, there is some old wire in the middle of the field here, which is booby-trapped.
Okay.
And as far as I can say, there are no other anti-personnel mines whatsoever.
After the plan has been made, the OC of the field squadron gives his orders.
Any questions?
No.
You?
No.
Now, Alan, your platoon will be responsible for number 3 gap. That's here, as you know. There aren't many AP mines. The first and most important thing is to get an 8-yard gap right through, so as to get the carriers and anti-tank guns forward. When that's done, start at once to widen the 16-yard gap for the armor and vehicles.
This stresses the importance of thorough reconnaissance, vital before any RE task. Now we'll see some more normal work in the divisional area. Bridging, water supply, demolitions and roads. This pontoon bridge was built by divisional engineers. And here's a folding boat bridge which was built over the Rhine in March 1945. Mr. Churchill and Field Marshal Montgomery seem to be taking quite an interest in it. It's much lighter than a Bailey. The bridge you see here is over the Seine in France. The Canadians made the initial assault crossing, and afterwards their sappers built several Bailey pontoon bridges in extremely short time. These sappers are looking for supplies of water, a perpetual sapper task in the field. If the results of this purification test are satisfactory, the well will be used as a water point. Here's a typical water point in a stream being made ready for divisional troops. This was in France in 1944. The unit water trucks in the background are lining up for water. The sappers who run these water points are required to keep their pumps in really good order and to do regular maintenance too. This railway bridge is being prepared for demolition. The sappers are placing charges against the girders and rails of the bridge. These men are Chindits who had been dropped behind the Jap lines in Burma to carry out offensive demolitions. Besides this, in a withdrawal, wide belts of demolitions have to be made on river lines and railway systems to hold up the enemy. Now for some more roads. This is the sort of problem which confronts the divisional engineers when a day's rain turns a jeep track in a forward area into a quagmire. In Burma, jeep tracks weren't so easy to find, and here you see one being hewn out of the side of a hill. There's quite a drop on that side, so the dozer driver must have all his wits about him. The divisional engineers also had to do first aid to roads in forward areas, employing heavy plant as often as possible. These scenes were taken in Italy in 1943. And here are sappers clearing anti-tank obstacles using pneumatic tools. When no plant is available, they have to get on with the job by using picks and shovels or by hand. Where stone quarries don't exist, they use the rubble from bombed buildings to fill in craters and widen roads. This one's a bit bumpy, but it serves a vital purpose. The evening before the attack, the assaulting units move up from their assembly areas to the forming up places. By this time, all commanders have made their plans. All the early reconnaissances have been carried out, and all units have been briefed for the attack. At the forming up places, the various units marry up for the river crossing. These storm boats, by the way, each have a crew of sappers. This party of infantry is forming up on its storm boats. The platoon commander has told them that they will have some hours to wait, so they take off their equipment. The platoon commander and the RE sergeant in charge of the boats synchronize their watches while the troops rest by their boats. At another forming up place, other infantry are resting by their LVTs, usually called buffaloes. These too were manned by sappers in the last war. Some buffaloes will only take personnel, but others have a ramp in the bow which will allow a jeep or anti-tank gun to be carried in the well. Here's an assembly area with lorry loads of folding boat equipment kept in readiness for the bridging operation. At an airfield far back, the airborne troops are loading up their planes and gliders in readiness for the operation, the airborne sappers among them. The platoon commander and the sergeant have a quick look round to see that all is well with the resting men. A mine recce party is waiting too. There are often long and trying periods of waiting before a bridging operation. The storm boats are carried forward to the river. There they go. At other points up and downstream, the buffaloes are making their crossings. Now the main attack has begun, and for miles along the river in either direction, the infantry are pouring across to establish a bridgehead. At a very early stage, rafting begins. The raft commander calls forward the tanks and guides them aboard, making sure that they take up a central position on the raft. This is a 50-60 raft. Here's a Churchill ARV coming aboard a raft further downstream. Most of these shots were taken on the Rhine assault in March 1945. These rafts are winched across by mechanical means. At another site, a field squadron is working close support rafts for lighter vehicles. They are driven by these propulsion units. Notice the sapper looking to the commander for hand signals. While all this activity is going on, the construction of a folding boat bridge is well advanced. These sappers are carrying road bearers down to the river's edge in readiness for the next bay. When a bay has been constructed, it is warped along the length of the bridge. Other bays are being built on the bank here. More bays are attached to the head of the bridge. Anchors are dropped up and downstream. The sappers make fast their cables to the boats. Finally, the bridge reaches to the far bank, and it's all ready for the supporting arms going up to the assaulting units. While the bridging operation is going on, reports are constantly coming back to the various RE headquarters. Here, sapper clerks are constantly taking messages from DRs and over telephones, while draftsmen keep the charts and maps up to date. This is but one of the many tasks that are carried out by RE office staffs during operations. After the bridgehead has been well established, there's a build-up until all is ready for the next phase. It's a set-piece attack on a heavily defended position. There go the Sherman flails. They flog a clear path with their chains for the armor and infantry that are to follow. The infantry start moving up. The flails go right up to the anti-tank ditch and then move back a bit so that the rest of the armor can pass them. Here are two half-troops of Avries. Remember, they're assault vehicles RE. One half-troop has two fascines mounted and the other an assault bridge and a fascine. These fascines are made up of 30 or 40 rolls of chestnut paling, are 7 or 8 feet in diameter and weigh about 3 tons. The left-hand team gets to the ditch first and a fascine is dropped. The Avry which dropped it goes straight over. The other half-troop has got up to the ditch and there goes the assault bridge. The modern type is about 35 feet long and will bridge a gap of up to 28 feet. Avries, gun tanks and crocodile flame-throwing tanks then go straight over these two crossings and make for the pillboxes on the far side. More armor and infantry follow them across. That's the troop leader of the Avries. He's going in to have a bash at a pillbox with his petard. The petard is that short kind of gun you see on the turret of the Avry. It's now out of date, but it was actually a spigot mortar which fired a special demolition charge called a flying dust. After the petard has made a hole in the pillbox, the flame-throwing crocodiles blanket the target with flame. Through the flames go the infantry, right on to the objective. We've given you some idea of what the Royal Engineers did in the last war. Equipments have changed and will change, but the tasks of the sapper will always remain. The sapper, the man of all work, the man who is ready to do anything and go